Hi
Hello.
everyone, and welcome to part two.
Yes, this is the part two. We hope you enjoyed the first part, and I hope you guys are really looking forward to this one. Anyways, we are recording it already, and you have it in your hands. I want to quickly talk about the roles of our spiritual father. There was something I missed in the part one that I would like to talk about. So I remember that one of my pastors, my spiritual fathers, reached out to me during that period and he said, "Oh, are you in a relationship with anyone?" I told him, "Oh, I'm considering someone and I'm praying about him." He asked him to reach out to him. And it was one of those things that got me really impressed about him. So when he reached out to my spiritual father, he told him the first thing my spiritual father asked him, that's one of my pastors, the second one, they were two. He told him to write his convictions about me. And he wrote them. It was in PDF format, maybe in 3 pages or so. Wrote his convictions about me and he sent it to him by email. And I think they got to talk. And after he read the convictions, he asked him to write his salvation experience. No playboy will subject himself to such, or even an unserious Christian. But he went ahead and he wrote not just his convictions about me being his wife, he went ahead and he wrote his salvation experience in PDF format and emailed it to my pastor.
Do you know why I was comfortable doing that?
No, please share with us.
All right, it's not just because I was genuine, but there are two key reasons. The first is, well, first of all, let me say this. When she said you have to go through my spiritual fathers, I was excited. Why? Because we being from the same church, I knew our church emphasized that flow of that process flow when it came to the journey towards marriage. And I was a firm believer in that. So when I saw somebody who respected that same
Authority.
process, respected the authority that process would require you to submit to, I was happy. I said, this is somebody that really respects authority. And that was why I had no problem doing that. And that brings me to the first reason why I was excited to do that. It was a process I myself had already accepted and submitted to, that's the way it should be. In fact, I know we are not meant to be talking about other people but us, but in fact, in one of my previous relationships, I remember one of the ladies, the relationship was more of dead on arrival, because one of the ladies asked and said, "Why did you need to go through my pastor to get to me? That is just so..." That was clearly somebody who did not see the benefit of the process, and we'll get to that. And the second reason was, I was so excited about my decisions and I knew it was the right thing. So sharing it was no problem to me. If anything, I was looking for opportunity to share it. Say, "You want my coffee? I give it to you. I give it to you right now." Right? You want, So for me, and I had nothing to hide really. So to me, it was more of a venting your joy. Have you heard of that before?
No, sir.
You've heard it here first. Venting your joy. So there you go. Continue, please.
So he did that and I was really impressed. At the point I was even in my mind, I was like, are you sure my pastor is not stressing this guy too much? Hope he won't run away. But he did not. He wrote it with joy, and that would lead me to the other things I saw in him that made me say, okay, I can marry this person, or I want to be his wife. Now, we've talked about how God spoke to us in the first video. So now we want to talk about the things we saw. So for me, anybody who knows me knows that I have a strong personality. And sometimes it can even be misunderstood, but I'm not going to go into that. I know people will say, "Hey, this is your attitude. Are you sure you can submit to a man and all?" Of course, I don't really, how do I put it now? I had known that I can't submit to anybody. If you are a guy that you don't have sense, we will have problem in marriage from beginning to the end, because there will be an end to that marriage if I marry a guy that does not have sense. So I knew that there were certain things I was looking for in a man that I as a person can submit to as a wife. And the first thing was that this person has a strong relationship with God, not just someone that is very active in church. Do you have a relationship with God? If you don't have a relationship with God, I can't submit to you. And not just any relationship, do you have a working relationship? So I saw it in him that he had a strong relationship with God. He had a working relationship with God. He respects God so much. If he hears God say anything, even at the point it became something that bothered me in the marriage, because if he says God has told me this, you can't change his mind. Even when things are going south, he will still stick to God. So I said, okay, I can submit to this kind of person. I can submit to this man. This is someone I can marry and we won't have problems. 2, he is a very confident person and he knows what he wants. So you can't push him around, or what's the word now? So he was very confident. He knew what he wanted. And I said, okay, this person knows what he's doing. 3, he is a very intelligent person. And not just intelligent, he is full of wisdom.
We are saying.
He's full of wisdom. You see those times I was asking him questions. I was asking him questions so that he would just say something. He would just give me one answer that would just make me say, God, is this the guy you want me to marry? Did you hear what he said? And I've done it to several guys, and I can tell you almost every time they miss it. I keep asking questions because I want to know how you think. I want to know how you reason. I want to see how deep you are. Or I'll just ask you a question to let you misyan, and I can hold it against you and say I can't go into a relationship with you. I know there was someone I tried that with, and he was lying to impress me. And I was just laughing because I felt in your mind now, you think you're impressing Gloria, but you don't know. And you have failed. You don't know. You don't know. But for every question I asked him, he won't just reply. He was replying with so much wisdom, and I dare to say that I could see the wisdom of God at play in some of his questions. So every time I try to catch him like this, he just escapes. He kept escaping, and there was nothing to even hold against him to say, God, I can't marry this person. So those were the things I saw in him. He was a leader, and he's still a leader. He knows, even when things are going wrong, he knows how to. So I just saw those things and I said, okay, this is someone I can submit to. And those were the things I saw, and I said, okay, aside from the fact that God has spoken, this is someone that has some characteristics that can complement who I am. So first of all, I know who I am. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I know that once in a while I can want to misbehave. Is it strong enough to bring me back to my senses? Not someone that will say she has started, let's leave her. So it's not like I'm a stubborn person, but then someone that is in charge. So he's very in charge, and even as he's in charge, he's still caring, he's loving, He's a very empathetic person.
At this point, I sincerely don't know what facial reaction to make, so I'll just keep it neutral. What? Your wife is praising you, and you're not allowed to say anything. You're just allowed to sit back there. It's a very uncomfortable.
I'm not praising you. I'm saying what I saw.
It is well. Let me keep my neutral place. Please continue.
So those were the things I saw, and I said, okay, I can have a successful marriage with this person. This person is loving, is caring, is intelligent. I can hold conversations that make sense with him, not those have you eaten conversation. You know those, you know what I'm talking about. I know you do. So those were the things, and I saw that he loves God. And that's the first thing for me. You have a relationship with God, you love God. You know, he is someone I know that respects God so much. I'm not talking about the fear of God. Of course, he fears God. But you know, when you love someone so much, he loves God so much that he respects him, and he won't do certain things. So I just felt so secure with this person. I said, okay, this is the kind of person I want to marry. He's not just a church goer or just active in church. He loves God. He has a relationship and every other thing I've said. So those were the things I saw, and I said, okay, I think this is a hot cake for me. And I went. So I'm going to pause and let him talk before we move into the next thing. Thank you for listening.
And I really thank you for listening. Well, I have to appreciate my wife because there's no time I hear praise from her lips and I can act full. I have to react.
It's one of the things that make our marriage work anyways.
Okay. So I would answer my own question by finding it where it's located in the story. So what qualities did I see in my wife even after hearing God? Now, these qualities for me served as confirmatory qualities, and I must say these were qualities that distance could not affect the verity or the validity of the qualities, because the qualities, whether you're far or near, is the same thing. And I'll try and share some of them with us. Now, we are in the month of June 2021. Her spiritual father has just accepted to give his blessings to the relationship. She had accepted me, I think beginning of March. She had given me her yes. Then I think 2-3 months later, as she said, in the 6th month, her spiritual father accepted. So what was next? Who else is to accept? Oh, and I had also been talking with my pastors, and they had also advised, pray about it. And after I told them and briefed them of what was going on, they said, okay, we're fine, carry on. It was now time for parental consent, and I had to tell my parents about her. Now, the same way she had her specs about who her husband should be, in like manner, my parents had their specs. Who was the first person I spoke with? I think it was my mother.
It was your dad.
It was my dad?
Yes, I remember.
But it's my mother's talk that
Stuck
is
to
most
your
memorable.
head.
And to cut the long story short, the excitement I came with, the expectation I came with that my mother would catch a glimpse of what I'm seeing, because yes, I admitted to her and I said, my parents may have an issue with you in the beginning, but I'm sure they'll come around eventually because they are Christians. Well, eventually took a while. So my mother had asked her own questions, just like she asked me her own questions. But my mother wasn't buying the whole long distance relationship. She wasn't buying the whole, you mean this girl came out from a broken family, this girl studied this course, this girl is currently doing this with her life.
Is that you think she'll make a good wife?
She'll make a good daughter-in-law / wife? No, sir. Go and pray again. She started with go and pray again. That was a mild way of just saying you don't know what you're doing. But eventually, go and pray again turned to a stiff no. And that no continued all the way to December of that same year. That's an additional June to December.
6 months.
That's an additional 6 months. My father shared the same point of view, although he was a lot more gentler with it in communicating his non-approval. At the point in time, my mother gave me the idea that this thing was causing her brain pain. And so why do you keep coming back time and time again and saying that it's still this lady? Huh? You are not seeing other ladies. There are many fishes in the sea. That kind of mindset. And it's important, I must say, that of course my mother meant well. She may not have gone about it in the best way. I mean, I would have expected that she would have even interacted with this lady and say, okay, let me just...
And she eventually did now.
Well,
we will
get to that. We will get to that. But, she made her judgments before even lay eyes on her. So this is now where the qualities I loved about my wife. While all this was happening, she knew. Now, I'm not a lady, but I can imagine that rejection, the way a lady treats rejection is different from the way a guy would treat rejection. Especially when it's a rejection from somebody whose acceptance means a lot. Now, we could have gone ahead and said, forget it, parental consent, who needs this? What do they know? And just get married and eventually tell them and say, as a means of passing information, for your information, we've married.
No.
But coming up under the spiritual tutelage we had come up under, we knew that when parents bless you with their hearts, God has already given them that, what do you call it? It's
a right or an authority.
Yes, it's a follow come with them, no matter how, what do you call it? Quote unquote, wayward your parent may be. That thing still remains with them. And it was what we also needed to chase, because we knew this marriage was more than willpower. It needed the blessings of God to follow it. So that's why I had to keep going back to my mother over and over again. And I saw the way she knew my mother didn't accept her, my father didn't accept her, but she still stuck by her convictions and said, I know they don't love me, but I choose to love them. I won't be in bitterness. I told myself, I said, even me, if somebody with my true person tells me and says, I don't give a care in the world about who you think you are not good enough. It's going to take a lot for me to even want to look at their face.
Sorry, can I come in here? So people don't think there was a superpower or I'm a superhuman. Yes. So before I even met him, I had always prayed about...
Okay, you know.
Okay.
I think it would be better for me to say it, and so that I will say from my perspective what I saw. She may eventually talk about it again, but there's no problem. So I also knew my wife to be somebody who carried her heart on her sleeve. Whatever she felt, she would say it. She was a very sincere person. It's another thing I saw, which I loved. So I knew what was going on with her. I didn't need to do too much hard work and say, you used to call me by 6, you called me by 8. Something's going wrong. I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do that. She was very fortunate. In fact, I remember a time when she told me, I said, you're not calling me enough. I want your attention.
Abi?
You do that, you make me happy. As much as I didn't agree with her proposition, I was like, man, that is a very clear, it can't be clearer than that. I loved her clarity in communication. I loved her assertiveness over, she didn't want, she made my job easy as a fiance and even now as a husband. She didn't want to say, I'll give him cues if he does. No.
Cues, he'll get time.
So she was clear, she was genuine, she wasn't manipulative. Wasn't at all. And she also did care about my feelings. She would pick on my own social case. I'm the one who is coded in my communication. I'm the one that keeps things close to my chest. But she will notice things and she will want to probe and say, I hope you are doing okay. So that was my wife. She is authentic. And even when those things were happening with my parents, she was also honest with her feelings. She said, man, this thing is biting me I've
Yeah.
even been tempted to just say, what kind of shame am I suffering because of man? I know God spoke, but he's getting to hear. But you know, it's the final decision that matters. And I looked at that and I say, it doesn't matter whether I've seen this person or not. This kind of quality, it speaks volumes. So that was something else I saw. And I also saw that, you know, while we were still waiting for consent, we were still living our lives normally. We weren't on the, what do you call it? We didn't keep things on hold and say, you know, it's tentative, so I'm not going to share my feelings with you. I'm not going to be so overt. Maybe I'll hold off on the I love you because clearance never did for that. No, we gave our all to the relationship, let it work, with the belief that consent will come because God was with us. And another thing I loved was that when I was observing her life and seeing what she was doing, now you may already know, but my wife is someone whose ministry has to do with counseling, has to do with prayer, intercessory prayers, and that has found its way into the lives of so many people. I see at the time she was not somebody that had all the money at her disposal, all the time at her disposal. You heard that she was trying to build her business at the time. I still remember the house she was living in. But somehow, in my opinion, I even felt she was more impactful than I was with all I had. And I said, my goodness. And that's when I framed a nickname, a pet name for her. I called her MG. It stood for, no, it's not Mama.
Do you want to tell them, or they should guess? Maybe we can now give gifts to anybody. But some people know already. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and share.
It's Mentor Gloria. Yes, I told her. I said, look, you're because where she exhibited leadership qualities, she too was a leader. I had to tell her and say, look, I'm learning from you. So in terms of empathizing with people, my goodness, she was good at that. And I was like, you know what, me, sometimes I'll be frank with you, as much as I'm a Christian, sometimes I like my space. I like anything that just causes me too much stress, I stay away. But she wasn't that kind of person. She shared herself, her resources with people, poured herself. And sometimes it's even why she would even say, after I've done all this person turns around and does all that. And she could be very invested. And I was like, you know what, I need more of that empathy in my own heart. So those were things I saw, and I said, in fact, I started even thinking about her as wife. I forgot that I had to tell her, I said, this is not about, are you good enough for me? I was even saying, it's like I'll be sharing you with the world. Because you are too good for one man to be using that kind of language and say, he's my wife. No, too good. Or in the words of DDK, too good, too good.
No, so good.
Oh, yes.
I hope she doesn't get to watch this video.
Of a DDK fan than myself. That's how I started thinking of her. This was no longer, what do you call it? I am assessing you if you fit my, no, at the point of time I was like, I don't disqualify. So it's that by the mercy and grace of God, I've gotten somebody this good. And that's the way I carried on with her. And yes, she was very humble. We had conflict during that time. Yes.
Several.
Yes. And for times where she was convinced she was at fault, it didn't take more than 24 hours to tender an apology. It was maybe much later in the relationship as other tensions grew that 24-hour now became. But one thing was...
Became what?
Became longer than 24 hours.
No.
Became days. But the point is, whenever she came, she would apologize, and she wouldn't do fake apology like all those, if I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry, it's not what I intended. I'd be like, what are you saying? She would apologize and say, I did wrong, I misspoke, I'm sorry. So this is something that was very vulnerable. I loved those. This was a companion for me. And yes, she did become my friend. In fact, it's in marriage that the friendship actually really grew. Courtship was like warm up, if you ask me. And so these are the qualities I saw. Of course, I've talked of her love for God. I also knew she was struggling with me, but I also saw how she would say, I know what God said. And for me, leadership is not about imposing yourself. Leadership is about, okay, this may sound cheesy, like, yeah, we've heard this before, but it's true, so let's say it again. Leadership is just about influence. Imposing is like this. Influence is like this. You use your pinky finger, just push the person, and the person will just flow. And it's easy to push her to flow. All I just need to do is just suggest to her. Those are convictions, and just remind her. So she's somebody that had a set of convictions I didn't need to build from scratch. I just needed to synergize. And her convictions matched mine. Yeah, I had to test her on things like dressing. I had to test her on things like money, materialism. I had to check those things. But I also knew that we were good prayer partners as well. I loved praying.
Yeah.
I love praying with her.
Yeah.
Okay, she wants to talk. Let me give her.
No. I just wanted to say that prayer times, even before we were married, before we met each other physically, were always beautiful times. Like there was, it could match my energy. Our energies just matched when it comes to the place of prayer. Like our energies were on the same level.
You see, this is another thing, that distance doesn't matter. You can be close, you can be far. It doesn't change the effectiveness of it. So these were things that I knew that eventually when I would see her, they'll be there. Because distance does nothing in affecting the quality of it. So there are so many things. I to remember them, I just have to replay my life with her, and I'll keep remembering them. I used to tell her, and this is where I'll end before I give it to her. I say, in marriage, I used to tell her, I say, I dare you. Ask me to mention 10 qualities about you I love. I won't repeat one. And I say that proudly because not only do I get to discover them every day, but I also learn to see how it's useful for me, my weaknesses, my blind spots. She's a very wise lady too. Yes, that's why my mother even likes her too. I'll get to that story of where she eventually met my mother. Eventually, we're trying to take it sequentially. We're trying to do it sequentially. So, in December, I remember going to my mother. I also hand over to her. She will talk about how the Lord broke through for us. You know, we had been praying, trusting God. I had gone back to my pastors. I said, "This is what is happening. I'm going to speak to my mother one more time." This is December 2021. And they said, "Okay, it is well, go. We trust God, you will get good results." You know, they were like that. And that December, I called.
And we had prayed. Not just one prayer, like we were praying since the day they had made their intentions known. We started praying, and we were praying about it consistently.
So, you know, in fact, at the point in time, I had even tried to speak with people I felt could influence my mother to see things differently. Let me not get to that. Let's just say it didn't yield fruit. Because my mother had her fears and concerns, many of them legitimate. When I mean legitimate in the sense that they should be considered. But Gloria was the exception. So in December, I go and I'm like, "Hi, Mom." After the usual pleasantries, I say, "Mom, it's still Gloria." My mother now felt she had to switch gears. And she said, "If you choose to continue in this way you are going, count me out. Because you seem to be hell-bent on this. Count me out." And at that point, I think I had to prove to her that I need you to come along with me. I know you want to also give me rope to hang myself, and I'll say, "Okay, fine, I'll go ahead. You don't want any part of the fight." I say, "No, I need your consent." And it's interesting. You know you need something that God says you need, but it's not coming. And you go back to God and say it's not coming, and you still want me to go and look for it again. It's like Moses going back to Pharaoh 10 times. And that was the first time I cried. I cried, though I didn't even know when the tears came out. In fact, I think for the first time I understood when ladies will want to say, I cry, I feel bad. Because I'll be like, "Why are you crying? Just look at it logically. There's no need to cry." But man, I cried. And I had to minister in church that day. I learned how to minister and keep your personal affairs in one corner. I told her about it. But we continued. Because one thing we were sure is that we felt more comfortable pursuing convictions we were sure of than staying outside the will of God and trying to deceive ourselves and say, well, maybe we made a mistake, God didn't speak. When you're outside the will of God, there's a discomfort. If you love God, there's a discomfort you feel, like it gets hard to breathe.
It's like a fish outside of water. Out of water.
So, in one of our discussions, she told me something about one of her friends, and that's where she'll take over now.
Okay.
This is now probably January 2022.
Yes.
Month
January
number 7 of seeking for parental consent.
No, was it 7? Okay.
Of seeking for parental
Yeah. Yes.
If not month number 8, Seth.
Yes.
Continue, Jerry.
So, he told me about his parents, and I'd always prayed. I had a friend that we were always praying together, and we had always prayed that we would have in-laws that would love us just the same way we love their sons. It was a prayer point we prayed for months, even years, sir. And I had always said it, that I don't want wahala in marriage. Once my mother-in-law does not like me, or my father-in-law does not accept me, I will carry my things and move away. But that was not the case this time, because I knew God wanted me to marry this guy. So I had to wait, and we kept on praying. And it seemed like the more we prayed, the harder it became to get their consent. So I think I was getting fed up. It was taking too long. You had not even met this person. There were times I felt stupid about even dating him then, because you've not met this person before. I think on 1 or 2 occasions I told some, I couldn't say the truth to certain people. Although I had to go back to tell them the truth. So it was difficult enough for me to be dealing with that. Then they are not accepting me. Of course, they had their reasons, because I, as a person, I have heard stories of ladies who are from broken homes, and they've just carried the baggages from their background into their marriages, and they're messing up their marriage. I understand, but I think I am one of those few that have enjoyed God's mercy, and God has helped. So it went on like that, and it was tiring. I think at that point in time I was even ready to let go. I was just waiting for God to just say move on. I still loved him. We had even talked that we will still be friends if this thing does not work out, but let's just see how it would go. So I remember 1st of January 2022, I was at my spiritual father's place, and one of his daughters, who is also my friend, like a sister to me, came in, and we're just gisting, and she told me about they are now married too, about her fiance. He was not in the country too, so we were in similar situations. Her parents-in-laws too were not accepting her. We were in similar situations. The only difference is that they had met each other. They knew each other before he left the country, but we didn't know each other before we met each other. So she told me that her fiance told her that she should just go to their house and just visit his parents. He was not in the country. Just visit my parents. Let them see you, and let's know what will happen from there. And that January 1st happened to be the day she went to visit them. And she said they had said they didn't want them to marry. They didn't want him to marry her. But when they saw her, they just said, we like you already. Go ahead and marry our son. And they just accepted her just like that. And I was so happy for her when she was sharing the testimony. And while we were talking, and I was sharing my own with her, and while we were talking, the Holy Spirit told me, this is the path that you will tread. But I didn't tell her, because it doesn't really make sense, because I feel the only thing my parents-in-laws didn't say is over their dead body. They vehemently said no. And I was like, Holy Spirit, should I tell this guy? He said, no, don't tell him. But this is the path that you will tread. So I had the conversation with her that day, and we went home. I didn't tell him. I can't remember if I told anybody about it. Maybe I told him we had a conversation, but I didn't tell him. The Holy Spirit told me I would tread that path. About 2 months later, that was in March, early weeks in March, the first few days in March, he called me and he said, "Babe, I want to discuss something with you. It's okay if you don't want to do it, but please, I want you to do it." And he was begging. I said, "Go on and say what you want to say." And he went ahead and he said, "I want you to visit my parents in Abuja." I am still based in Ibadan. Travel down to Abuja to go and meet people that said they don't want to see me. They don't even. But I remember what God had told me, so I just smiled. And I said, "No problem. I would go," but I was scared. It was, even though God had told me few months before that I was going to do that, and what he was saying was just a confirmation and a go ahead, that it was the right time. I was scared. I didn't want to do it. It didn't just even make sense. How would I even travel all the way down to Abuja to meet people that said they don't want to see me? What if they pour hot water on me and all? But I spoke with my pastor in church in Lagos, and I told him, I had carried him along, but I told him this is what he said. Though God had told me this before, but I'm a bit scared. I don't think I want to go, even though I know God had said. And he said, "Gloria, favor works with sight." I can't forget that in my life. God bless PD. That's my pastor, Pastor Dikbo. He said, "Favor works with sight. Go." Even though we have prayed for the favor of God upon your life, until they see you, it may not be activated. Until the king saw Esther, and he preached a sermon to me on the call. I called my spiritual father too, and he said that is a wise thing to do. It shows that this guy is very serious about you. I advise that you go. And my spiritual father advised me, although I wasn't going to do that, he advised me to go with a gift, because I was like, how will I go with a gift? Won't they think I want to bribe them? But he told me go with a gift, and the Holy Spirit gave me an idea of the kind of gift I should go with. And I think they still appreciate the gift even till date. So we started planning, and I embarked on that journey. There was no point even going by air, so that we will not waste money in case they say they still say no. So I went by road, and the plan was to stay in a friend's place. His best friend would take me to his mom, and in church, meet her in church. So I was at my best friend's place. I was at my friend's place rather, and I went to church to meet his best friend on a Sunday, hoping that his mom would come to church, but she ended up not coming to church that day. And he had to start calling his mom to track where she was so I could meet her. And she was in another church. And I was already getting stressed. And I remember he told me later on that his mom had said, when he told his mom that I want you to meet Gloria, she's in Abuja, and I want you to meet her, his mom said, "I don't want to see that girl." Somehow I went to the church where she was, and you can imagine anticipating to meet this person all the way from Ibadan. The day I was going to meet her, I thought I'll meet her after service, and I had to wait until around 4 p.m. All the thoughts that were running through my head and all. I eventually met her, knelt down and greeted her. Don't need and get up. And she said, "Okay, let's talk." I met his dad too in church that day. I just greeted him. He didn't even know me, but the mom knew me. So we sat down somewhere in church and we started talking, and I don't think I have had a conversation as draining as that. It was emotionally draining for me, because it was more like probing into my life, probing into my family, probing into my background. It's not something I'm so proud of. And don't make me feel less of who I am. It was emotionally draining for me. And we kept talking, going back and forth and all. I was already tired. And in my head, I was like, see, it's your son that came to ask me out. You people should stop stressing me. I'm just here because I know God wants me to be here. And I think we had the conversation for quite some time. And at the end, towards the end of the conversation, she said, are you sure you love my son? I don't even know if I replied in a rude way or not. But the response I gave out of my frustration was, if I don't love him, I won't travel by road all the way from Ibadan down to Abuja. And she stood up, and I stood up and followed her. So I had the gift in the gift bag. I think I bought a bottle of wine. I bought a very good Ankara fabric for her and a good senator material for my father-in-law. So they were all in a gift bag, and I was going to drop it with her. So his friend came close to me and said, how did it go? I said it didn't go well. Because she obviously wasn't still interested in me. So we went to her car and I said, let me drop this gift for her. Mommy, I brought gift for you, and I dropped it in her car. And his best friend was saying, God bless him for us. He said, Gloria, why not go with him? Let him drop you. She's going towards your best friend's house and your friend's house. Let her drop you somewhere around. I said, no, I don't even want to go with this woman. Not after that draining conversation. I don't want to go. And he convinced me, said, just go. We never can tell what will happen while you guys are driving home. And mind you, his cousin was also in the car. So I sat at the back, his cousin was in the front with her, and she said, okay, you can join me. And also I joined them, and she said, I want to see a sister of mine. So we went, and she told his cousin to go and check if the woman was at home. So while the cousin left, she asked me some questions. I said, what are the things that your father would accept, would request from us if we want to marry you? And in my head, I was like, okay. I said, I don't know, but I can make inquiries. And I was like, hope they won't give us problem when we want to come and marry you. I said, I don't think so, ma. And she was like, okay, anyways, just ask. But that's not me saying I won't accept you. Like she just said it, like, it's not like I've accepted you, but just ask. Let's even know what's going on. So it happened that I eventually had to go in with her to meet her sister. And, we talked and they were speaking Igbo. I didn't really understand, but the body language was from the woman to her was, just let them. Just allow them. So as I was about leaving, because I had to order bolts from there, she said, is this story not getting too long?
If it's getting too long, call my line now. I'm listening.
So, as I was about to leave, she said, when are you leaving? I told her I was leaving on Tuesday. And she said, okay, I think you should see me in my office tomorrow. Let's talk. And I said, okay, maybe that's a green light, but it still didn't mean anything. This person has not really given approval. So the next day, I called and a line. She wasn't receiving her call. Eventually, a line was switched off. So I just undressed and I lay down on the bed that tomorrow I'll go back to Lagos, to Ibadan. And after then, my phone rang with someone else she called with another line and told me to meet her at a hotel. She was having a program, an event there. So I went, it was buffet, and I was hungry. She said I should eat. I told her I was not hungry because I didn't want to dish, and she would say, oh, she took too much food, or she did not take enough, or the way she was eating, that's why I said she cannot marry my son. So I just behaved myself. I did not eat, even though I was very hungry. And after the event was over, she was taking pictures with some of her colleagues, and she said, come, let's take pictures. And I'm like, hello, ma, you have not told me that you've accepted me and we are taking pictures.
You see, let me say something here. So here is what I discovered. There was some parallels, or there are some parallels between how she interrogated me and how my mother interrogated her. However, let me say, all the while, while she was narrating this thing to me, because I think it happened over the space of 1.5 days. Yeah. I was just, because I was all the way in that country, It was like I was in a control situation room monitoring everything. I have no control. I'm just trusting God. And she was narrating to me. I say, hey, hey, hey. But let me fast forward to the point where she now gives me a video call. And with a bit of anxiety, I accept the call. And then in the call, I see a surrounding that looks strange but familiar. It happened to be my own family house in Abuja. And I saw my father's legs as he was seated in the background. And I said, Jewel, where are you? And she smiled and says, well, I'm in your family house.
Okay, sorry. So the part he skipped
Oh,
is that after I took the pictures with his mom, she invited me over to her office and we closed late that night. And when we were going home, she said, do you mind sleeping over at my place? And I was like, yeah, the one I came to meet in Abuja, I don't mind. And that was how I got to his house. I met his dad, and his dad said, so you are the girl that's been making my boy to, how did he say it? It's because of you that he has not gotten himself, something like that. I can't remember again. And I had a very wonderful conversation with his dad. We laughed, we talked, and
so even now in the future, we were trying to analyze my mother's behavior. 1 minute she's pulling her to herself, the next minute she's saying, okay, just stay at arm's length. The young lady came to present herself to you. Give her straight answer now. Say, just come to my house. Even after she had stayed in the house, I said, let me wait for my mother to get back to me with her own report. My mother no get back to me. I said, okay, I will call my mother and ask her directly. And I asked my mother, I said, okay, you've now seen Gloria. What do you think? And my mother was sounding like a teacher who was,
she's a teacher now.
yes, but she was sounding like a teacher who was reluctantly giving a student 10 over 10. She said, well, I've seen her. She listed about 5 qualities. And not just 5 qualities. These were 5 cornerstone qualities.
From I don't want to see her.
Yeah.
To those qualities.
I reported those qualities back to her and it encouraged her. Because you see, her and my mother are similar. You see why I said there were some parallels between the way she interviewed me and the way my mother interviewed her. The only difference is that me, I heard from God, so I embraced the interview. As for her, as it was also for me, it was a case of make or break. So somebody was using the interview with, hey, would this be where I will fail? But I'm sure if we had trusted God, she would have relaxed a bit more. But man, she did take a lot of sacrifice for me, traveling all the way without any assurances, that's physical assurances that this will work. And during that kind of interview, I mean, thank you.
You're welcome.
So essentially what my mother was just saying was that because ladies that have stayed in my mother's house, they don't have a free pass. So yes, my mother's house is like for ladies, it's almost like
drilling center.
I wouldn't call it a drilling center, like say she will put them through very arduous tasks or so. But my mother is quite meticulous.
Yeah. Not quite, very meticulous.
So she would give a sort of supervision that you can't come out of that house and say you've not picked up new practices, whether willingly or unwillingly. So these were things she was looking out for in Gloria, and evidently she found it. And I guess she was just like, I cannot find anything against her. She has a 10. But that's all I'll say. Okay, she wasn't making her face like that. But that was essentially what she was saying. So I didn't want to push too much and say, yes, and so that results.
She has given you more over time now. Even now that we are married, she's still giving us.
That's a mad video. So for us, it was just like our mother and my father had essentially said the relationship can progress. Let's
Yeah, he said it on the call that night.
Okay.
That you should come home and let's start doing the proper thing.
Yeah.
And his mom too had already said, let your dad tell us the things that we need to do. We need to bring if we want to marry you. And that was how God answered our prayers. And he got back into the country June 15th, 2022. And we had our court wedding. He proposed on July 7th, 2022. And we had our court wedding July 15th, 2022.
Let me say this, and my father may be watching because he's a fan of our videos. My father said, you come and let's try and put substance to your your thoughts. Let's confirm some things. Let's take it one step at a time. I said, okay, daddy. I didn't want to push it, but in my mind I was saying, as I'm coming to marry her. Why?
Okay, go on.
Because like I was telling you, those things I have checked. Distance, so close eye though, I already know that they won't change. In fact, if they changed, I will even be more concerned with what made her change it than, oh, this is her real personality. No. They were so strong, they were impressed. I was like, she has passed my previous candidate. Of course, somebody will say, hey, what if she was too short or too black or too this or too that? To me, those were mundane issues. Very mundane. I remember when I saw her first in the airport, I was like, okay, she's better than I thought.
Melanin poppy.
But that's all right.
Melanin poppy.
That was all right for me. That was all right. That just lasted briefly. But every other thing, it was one. And I tell you, marriage, honestly, if you are unhappy with your spouse, all those things will just mean nonsense. Of course, they are beautiful, but they are icing on the cake. It's not the cake for me.
Yeah.
So yes, we got married. After I told my parents, I said, I'm sure, let's get married. And I thank God they flew.
Yeah, because even for me, when he said I'm coming, so we'll get married, somewhere within me, I was like, am I ever ready to get married? Is it going to work? Like, not fear of really work, but I was like, okay, I think we still need some more time. I wasn't expecting it to be like in 1 month we're married. Of course, I just had to flow with it. I think I had a conversation with my spiritual father and I was saying, all this rush, I think we need to calm down. And he was asking me, and his wife, he said, what do you want to be doing? What are you waiting for? I think at that point I just said, okay, no problem. And
yeah.
I also flowed.
I get that concern, and maybe that concern is also something I shared, which is, can we test run our dynamics, conversation dynamics, being in our company, in each other's company dynamics, but over the distance we have tested it. I know people will be like, hey, no distance and physical, but the content of what we are discussing, long distance.
And you know, I normally say it to people, to him, that a lot of people would not understand the level of intimacy we had built over that long distance relationship. We were not just having funny conversations, we were having deep conversations that would expose anybody, deep conversations that built intimacy.
So I mean, if you've checked that, what else except you are just being like Gideon and say, okay, the wool is dry and everywhere wet. Now make the wool wet and everywhere dry. Like you just want God to give you signs without end because you just have cold feet. And I get that. It's a new phase. Nobody knows what marriage will be like until you're married. But that's the thing about being in the will of God. You can actually jump. You can see that and just jump and know you won't fall.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was the source of all my boldness in everything I did. Even in telling her, let's get married at so time. That was the source of my boldness.
And we've been married for almost 2 years. I don't think there's ever been any situation that has risen. Of course, we've been faced with challenges, We've had a lot of tough times, like I said, external challenges, not internal between both of us. But not for once have we said, oh, maybe if we had known each other physically,
Um,
we've not had reasons to say that, or maybe if we had delayed with our marriage for some time before getting married, maybe we would have known. No. In fact, people don't believe when they see us that we had that kind of courtship, because we have a nearly perfect marriage, and we are not saying it for the screen. We have a nearly perfect marriage. Let's not say perfect. We enjoy peace here, we enjoy love here. Anybody that comes into our atmosphere knows that it is all love, all joy, all peace. And God has been good to us.
um, and I think I'll round up with this statement she made. I will only submit to a man who has submitted to God, and I can only lead a woman who has submitted to God. That's what has made it very easy.
Yeah.
And when I mean very easy, I mean very easy. Look, there are sometimes I leave it to God, and God is the one that will call her to do His will.
Yeah.
There are sometimes I have to be patient while God is calling her to order, and still love her between when she is not yet called to order and when she is. I'll be patient in joy, so that I don't need to endure any aspect of my marriage. And I love the way God simultaneously communicates with us, so we really feel like three people in the marriage and not two.
Yes.
Because marriage can get very, what's the word? It can get very spooky. I'll explain for all my science people out there. If imagine going out to outer space. Outer space is a very quiet place. No air to communicate sound, just vast blackness with dots of stars. And you're the only one there. You left a planet of 8 billion people. But as you're there in that outer space, that quietness, it can almost make you feel like Ojuju will come and hug you very soon. Something like marriage. You had party with 300, 400, depending on your guest list. Everybody was hailing you. During the courtship, your friends were saying, teasing you, you'll get married, they did bridal shower. You step into that house with that person, you can be like you're in outer space. Because nobody followed you. It's quietness. In fact, you can even try and gist and try and feel the quietness with fake activity and joy, so that things are bubbling. But gist fit finish.
Yes, no.
That's if your source is from a finite place, supply. But one thing that has made that quietness look so lively is just that leading of God. That fellowship of God. Each day, I don't make timetables for how the day will go, but every time we have an activity or a project God has put us on, or something to consider and talk about, ways we've grown, and we even have review with ourselves. Why? Because somebody has done timetable for us. I don't have to crack my head too much. Sometimes I admit it makes me a lazy husband. I should be cracking my head once in a while and springing surprises on her. But the point is, I've been helped, and I know God is helping her. And that's what makes us feel we don't feel lonely anymore. The way we are single and we are not feeling lonely, we're also not feeling lonely together because of God followed us. We are so comfortable in His will. Man, there have been challenges, enemies seen and unseen, financial threats, health scares, and sometimes even feelings of internal inadequacy. But the Holy Spirit has a way of just filling it with joy. Is that joy we communicate? We're not faking anything. All these things is just an outflow of that's how the Holy Spirit makes us feel. You know, if we ever feel grumpy, we've just disconnected temporarily.
Yeah.
When I joke, I always say he's on serious. That's really the joy of the Lord, just rejoicing over how I need not worry, because the future of a righteous man is that of. It's like being a child. We have a child. Sorry, this discussion has entered another thing. We have a child.
I was looking at you.
We have a child, Chisom. That girl plays and plays. Even when we're discussing serious matter, things that we're laughing. She's laughing, she's playing, she doesn't have a care in the world. That's how I feel sometimes. I feel like somebody is managing the bigger issues for me. so that I can play and be unserious, and we can play and be unserious. That's our marriage. That's how I feel. And it came as a surprise to me in many
Yeah.
aspects.
Yeah, you know, I've always also wondered when we get into marriage, not even if I met him, that how do married people do it? How? But I don't know, but we enjoy each other's company. God has helped us. There is no time we are together and there is no gist. There is nothing to talk about. There is nothing to pray about. Sometimes it could just be a Bible verse in his head and it's coming, babe, do you just realize that I just thought of this Bible verse, and we are already having Bible study. So it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful, and you know, that's the journey. So, and I think for me, one thing I also want to say is that God has proven to me that most of the time it can't always be my way. Of course, there are still disadvantages to me meeting him through somebody, because I think we'll talk about that some other time. There are disadvantages, but it just taught me that, see, when I want to show up, I decide how I show up, and you have to align with what I want to do. I did not like it, and I still do not like it, that we had to meet through someone. But God has decided on how we want it to go, and look at us today. We give God all the glory. So thank you so much for listening, staying with us
1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. God bless you, and do well to share with others. Like we always say, we don't know who get blessed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.